My daughter was being drugged, and the one doing it was her own aunt. It wasn't the doctor who told me that straight out. It was life. It was the bottle. It was the way my hand shook on an ordinary afternoon when all I wanted was to wash my daughter's school backpack, and instead I opened the door to the worst fear a mother can feel, realizing that violence had entered her home disguised as care. I remember the scene like it's happening right now. It was a Friday, late in the day. The kitchen smelled like laundry detergent and reheated coffee. The TV in the living room was talking to itself in the background, some news show I wasn't really listening to. Anna had flung her backpack in a corner, like she always did, and run upstairs to her room. I grabbed the backpack, muttering under my breath the way every mom does, opening zipper after zipper. I pulled out notebooks, crumpled papers, a drawing of the two of us holding hands, an empty cookie wrapper I didn't remember giving her. Routine stuff, tired mom stuff. Until my hand bumped into something hard in the inner pocket, that tiny one nobody really uses. I felt a cylindrical shape, cold. For a second, I thought it was glue, a weird eraser, some random little thing. But when I pulled it out, it wasn't any of that. It was a white bottle, no label, smooth, with a cap that made a short click when my fingers pressed it by accident. A completely mute bottle, like it had been made so no one would ask questions. My heartbeat changed rhythm, not just a scare. It felt like I had suddenly stepped down a stair inside my own chest. I turned the bottle over, looking for anything that would tell me what was inside. A name, dosage, manufacturer, some clue. Nothing, not a single letter. That's when a folded little slip of paper slid out with it and fell into the wet sink. I grabbed it before it soaked through, opened it with trembling fingers. The handwriting was familiar, rounded, slanted, elegant. Give this to her when she's too restless. It helps calm her down. R. Regina. My sister. The favorite aunt. The one who knew how to handle kids. The one everyone always said was more grounded than me. I felt a cold shiver run up my back, like someone had opened a window inside me. Give this to her. My hand closed around the note. No talking to me, no talking to a doctor, no label. My daughter. For a few seconds, I just stood there in the kitchen, listening to the distant sound of the shower upstairs. Anna was singing some made-up song, off-key, just like always. And at the same time, the idea that someone had messed with my daughter's chemistry on their own started to seep into me like toxic smoke. I opened the bottle. The smell wasn't strong, but it had that chemical undertone you don't mistake. I took a pill in my hand, small, round, light beige. Nothing about it looked for kids. And that's when the metaphor I'd only fully grasped days later started to form. It was like finding a locked door inside my own house and realizing someone else had the key. That night, when Anna came down for dinner, I had already decided I wasn't going to pretend everything was normal. She sat at the table, little legs swinging in the air, wearing pajamas with little animals on them, hair pulled back into a crooked ponytail. The smell of mac and cheese rose from the pot, but I could barely feel it. "Sweetheart," I called, trying to control my tone. "Does Aunt Regina ever give you any medicine when you're with her?" Anna froze with her fork in midair. Her eyes darted sideways, to the tile, to nowhere. 1 extra second. 2. 3. She isn't slow. She never was. That was strange. "Sometimes," she mumbled, poking at her plate without eating, "she says it so I can calm down, that you don't understand certain things." I felt the world tilt just a little. Not enough to make me fall, but enough for me to know I wasn't standing in the same safe place as before. You don't understand certain things. That was it. That's how it starts. First you undermine the mother, then you steal the child. I set the bottle on the table between us. Anna's shoulders hunched immediately, like she recognized something forbidden. "Is this it, honey?" She bit her lip, not brave enough to meet my eyes. "Auntie said it was our secret," she whispered, "that you'd get mad if you found out." I felt something tear inside my chest. It wasn't just about the pills. It was the fact that a part of my daughter had been ripped away from me and stored in some secret vault between her and another woman, my own sister. I took a slow breath. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. I wanted to grab the phone and call Regina right then. But in that moment, something else spoke louder. I needed to know exactly what I was up against, because there are things we feel, and there are things we need to see written in front of us so we never doubt them again. The next day, I took the bottle to the local clinic. The hallway smelled like alcohol and disinfectant, kids crying somewhere in the background, and I was clutching my purse so tightly my hands started to ache. Nurse Fiona, a middle-aged woman with steady eyes, took the bottle and shook a pill into her palm. She lifted it up to eye level, the harsh white ceiling light hit the pill, and along with it, her expression changed. Subtle, but I saw it. Her face, neutral at first, turned more serious, tense. "You said this was given to a child?" she asked. "To my daughter," I answered. She looked back at the pill, rolled it between her fingers, sighed. "This doesn't look like anything for kids." That word, "doesn't," echoed inside me, dry and heavy. She didn't want to say more there in the crowded hallway. She just added, "Take this bottle to a doctor, a pediatrician you trust. Today, you did the right thing bringing it in. This is not the kind of thing people should treat like herbal tea." I left with my knees weak. The person who was supposed to back me up as a mother was stepping over me. The person who said she loved my daughter was messing with her without permission. The one everyone called balanced had put in my 7-year-old kid's backpack a secret way too heavy for her to carry. Right then, a certainty settled inside me like a brick. Something was very, very wrong. And from that moment on, I couldn't pretend not to see it. I just had no idea how deep it went, or how much, to save my daughter, I was going to have to finally save myself too. The day after I found the bottle, I woke up with a feeling I couldn't quite name. It wasn't just worry. It wasn't just fear. It was like someone had messed with the inner compass that guides me as a mother. I've always felt Anna before I saw her. I always knew when she was excited, sad, hungry, anxious. It was as natural as breathing. But that morning, when she walked into my bedroom, I knew something was wrong before I even opened my eyes. Her footsteps were slow, dragging, like she'd aged overnight. I opened my eyes expecting to see my girl smiling, asking for pancakes, talking nonstop about something that only made sense in her head. But what I saw was a quieter version of my daughter, like someone had turned her brightness down while she slept. "Morning, Mom," she said, almost in a whisper. The voice, it didn't sound like Anna. She sat on the bed slowly, like it took effort, rested her head on my arm, and stayed there. She didn't ask to be held, didn't ask questions, didn't laugh. I felt guilt wedge itself between my ribs. Something was happening to my child, and I hadn't seen it. In the kitchen, while I fixed breakfast, I watched Anna sitting at the table. Normally, she'd be touching the pans, opening every drawer, asking 1,000 questions about each step of the recipe. But that day, she just watched the empty space, watched without really seeing. I set a plate of pancakes in front of her. "You love pancakes, honey. Eat a little?" She poked at the edge of one with her fork, too slowly, with no interest. "Oh, I'm not hungry," she murmured. Her eyes took longer than usual to lift and meet mine. Those extra few seconds were enough to make my heart sink like a stone in deep water. This wasn't regular kid tiredness. It was something else. Something that stirs things on the inside. Something that shouldn't have been there. Later, as she put on her sneakers to go to school, I heard the front door open without a knock. Regina. My sister walked in like the house belonged to her, as she always did, and stopped in the middle of the living room with that polished smile of hers, sweet on the outside, evaluative underneath. "I came to see how you two are doing," she said, like she'd just come down from the heavens to bless us. I watched how she reacted to seeing Anna so dull. Her face didn't show concern, didn't show surprise, didn't show anything. What I felt in that split second was a jab of something I'd only recognize days later as satisfied indifference. It was like this quiet version of my daughter was exactly what she wanted. "She's been like this since yesterday," I said, trying to keep my voice even. "Really sleepy, really quiet." Regina gave a tiny smile. "She's just tired, Clara. You always exaggerate." That sentence had followed me since childhood, like something glued to my skin. But this time, it didn't make me doubt myself. This time, it made me doubt her. Anna yawned hard and slumped to the side. Regina watched, like she was analyzing, approving. Something inside me snapped. Not a snap of rage, a snap of recognition. Regina knew. Regina had seen this before. And Regina wasn't worried. She was comfortable. I drove Anna to school, but the silence in the car was suffocating. Every day, she usually asked questions all the way there about the trees, the clouds, every random thing we passed. That day, nothing. I tried to make small talk. "Honey, want me to pack your favorite snack for tomorrow?" Uh-huh. "You excited for art class?" I don't know." I checked the rearview mirror every 2 seconds. Her gaze drifted out the window like she was underwater, her thoughts slow, far away. My heart couldn't find a place to settle in my chest. At work, I couldn't finish a single sentence on the computer. The image of Anna quiet, slow, dim kept flashing in my mind. My hands trembled over the keyboard, and I gripped the edge of the desk just to steady myself. I grabbed my phone and texted Regina. "Did you give Anna anything yesterday?" She took a while, a long while, then answered, "She was really agitated. I did what you can't. I helped." The word help burned in my eyes. Before I could reply, another message came. "You're too sensitive. Don't turn this into a problem." That was the moment I felt for the first time with absolute clarity that she'd done this before, with other kids, with me, and that somehow my daughter was being shaped, calibrated, reduced to please someone who called that love. That afternoon, when I picked Anna up, her teacher pulled me aside. "She's very different," she said, clearly worried. "Today, I called her name 3 times. She didn't respond. She just stared at the wall like she was somewhere else." My stomach flipped. She touched my arm. "This isn't normal, Clara. Something's going on." I knew. I was scared to admit it, but I knew. That night, Anna fell asleep before she even finished dinner. A heavy, deep sleep that didn't match the energy she's always had. I tucked her in, touched her face, felt her breathing, too slow. And it hit me that this wasn't the sleep of a tired child. It was the sleep of someone being silenced from the inside. I walked out of her room and, leaning against the door, cried for the first time since the bottle showed up. I didn't cry because I had figured out what was happening. I cried because I didn't want to find out the rest. But right there, I made the promise that would change everything. I'm going to find out who's dimming your light, baby, and I'm going to turn it all back on, even if I have to burn the whole world down to do it. And I still had no idea how deep that darkness went. Dr. Everett's office sat at the end of a hallway that was too white, too bright. The kind of hallway that makes every step feel like you're walking toward a truth you can't avoid anymore. Anna walked beside me, holding my hand with an odd lightness. She wasn't gripping, wasn't swinging my arm. wasn't talking about anything that lived in her imagination. My daughter's hand was warm, but her spirit felt cold. And I already knew something was wrong before we even stepped through the door. When Dr. Everett called our names, my heart thumped somewhere behind my stomach. He'd always been kind and straightforward, but today he looked even more serious, like he already sensed this wasn't a minor concern. I closed the door behind me and set the labelless bottle on his desk. He looked at it like a man who recognized an old enemy. "I need you to look at this," I said. My voice came out shakier than I intended. He picked up the bottle, opened it, removed a pill, and lifted it toward the light. And then came the worst part of any medical appointment: the doctor's silence. The kind of silence that needs no degree to be understood. The kind that weighs. The kind that exposes. The kind that prepares the ground for the word serious. His expression changed slowly, not out of shock, but out of confirmation. And that look, I'll never forget that look. "Clara," he said, placing the pill on the desk, "this is not a pediatric medication." My entire body went cold. Even so, I managed to ask, "So, what is it?" He took a deep breath before answering, a heavy, measured, unsettling breath. "It's an adult sedative, a strong one, intended for patients with severe mood or behavioral disorders, completely inappropriate and dangerous for a child Anna's age." My heart beat once, twice, and then felt like it stopped. I looked at Anna. She was sitting in the chair, swinging her legs gently, staring into nothing with that clouded gaze. The doctor noticed. He leaned forward, his seriousness slicing through the air between us. "Clara, this is not something you give to calm a child. This directly interferes with how she feels, responds, thinks. It can impair short-term memory, attention, emotional development, depending on frequency." A memory shot through me like a bullet. Anna forgetting what I'd said minutes earlier. Anna taking too long to look me in the eyes. Anna falling asleep on the couch at 4 p.m. Anna too quiet, too small. A wave of guilt slammed into me. Could this be causing what she's been feeling? I asked. He nodded slowly. Yes. And if it was given repeatedly, the effects could have accumulated. We need to monitor her closely. That sentence dug into my bones. If it was given repeatedly. How many times? How many nights? How many days of my daughter's life were stolen by someone else's hand? The nurse at the clinic echoed in my mind. This doesn't look like anything for kids. And now I knew exactly why. "Who administered these pills?" he asked. I inhaled shakily, because saying it out loud made it real in a way I wasn't ready for. Her aunt, my sister. The doctor's expression grew even more serious, not judgmental, alert. "How often?" I swallowed hard. I don't know." That was the part that broke me. I, the mother. I, the one responsible. I didn't know. He saw the guilt swelling and rested his hands together on the desk. He didn't touch me, but the gesture grounded me just the same. "Clara, there was no way for you to guess. Whoever did this exploited trust, not neglect. That's very different." But I was still shaking. He continued. "From now on, stop immediately. Watch Anna for 48 hours. Pay close attention to how she reacts without the substance." And he paused as if choosing the right weight for the words. "You need to understand why this happened." That sentence clung to my skin. Why this happened. This wasn't just about the pills. It was about intention, about history, about someone who believed they had the right to interfere with my daughter's body, and maybe her spirit. We left the office. Anna held my hand, but not with her usual spark. Her hand felt too light, almost absent. In the parking lot, I buckled her into her seat and, for a moment, just watched her through the rearview mirror. She stared out the window, but she didn't seem to see anything. Sunlight hit her face, yet she barely blinked. A hot wave of panic rose inside me. I gripped the steering wheel hard, and I made myself a silent vow. I will follow this truth to the very end, even if it hurts, even if it destroys everything around me, because nobody touches my daughter. And right then, I realized something that chilled and awakened me at the same time. Anna was partially sedated, but the one who had started to wake up was me. I spent the rest of the afternoon repeating one sentence in my head, over and over again, like I was trying to convince the last part of me that still resisted. She did this. She really did this to my daughter. The doctor's report was still in my bag, heavy like a block of concrete. But there was something even heavier, the need to hear it from Regina's own mouth. Not because I needed confirmation, but because I needed to see whether she had the courage to stand by the poison she'd created. Anna was asleep on the couch, her body limp, consumed by a kind of exhaustion that didn't belong to childhood. I covered her gently, kissed her forehead, and grabbed my phone. My hands shook as I dialed. Regina answered on the first ring. "Clara?" Her voice came sweet, rehearsed, too polished. "I was worried. You disappeared." That sentence was already wrong. I disappeared? Or did she know exactly what I had found? I didn't bother with politeness. There was no room left in me for that. "Regina, I need to talk to you now." She paused. I could hear that tiny calculation gap she always used before choosing the sentence that made her look righteous. "All right," she said, calm on the surface. "Come over." "No, I want you to come here." Another pause. This one tasted different. The taste of someone who just realized she'd lost control of the board. "I'm on my way," she replied, still trying to keep her voice neutral. I hung up. Then I started pacing the room, unable to be still. I looked at Anna, so small, so defenseless, and something in me rose with a force I had never felt. The fury of a mother who finally knows who the enemy is. Regina arrived 15 minutes later. Always rushed, always composed, always carrying herself like she was above reproach. She walked in without knocking, as she always did, but this time I didn't step aside. She noticed. "What's going on?" she asked, setting her purse on the chair. "You look pale. Is Anna okay?" The concern sounded genuine, but only because Regina had always been an excellent actress when the audience was small. I held up the bottle. Just that. No preface. Regina paled, or maybe the lighting shifted. She was too good at controlling her expressions to be sure. "Oh," she said, forcing a little smile. "That? Where did you find it?" "In Anna's backpack," I said, meeting her eyes. "Oh, Clara." She gave a short, almost mocking laugh. "It's nothing. I was just helping you. Anna is a very intense child. You know that. You were the same. And look how much you suffered because of it." She said it like a compliment. Like my intensity was a defect she'd always been trying to fix. Like she was the guardian of what was correct. A wave of disgust went through me. "Don't twist this," I said. "I took it to a doctor, Regina." Her eyebrow twitched. Half a second, but I caught it. "A doctor?" she repeated, lifting her chin. "Clara, please, you're being dramatic. I only gave it to her to calm her down a little. Kids these days have no limits. I was helping. You've always been too emotional to manage that." The sentence dropped into me like a boulder. "You're too emotional. You've always been like this. I was helping." Regina wasn't defending Anna. She was defending her story, the one where she is the patron saint of fixing people. "The doctor was clear," I said. "You gave my daughter a sedative meant for adults. It can affect memory, development, everything." Her smile vanished. "You're exaggerating," she snapped. "People use this all the time. I just didn't want her to grow up suffering like you did. If you can't handle your own child, then I can." That last sentence broke the lock inside me. If you can't handle your own daughter, I can. That was the truth of her control. She believed she knew more about my child than I did. She believed she had the right to correct whatever she considered excessive, inconvenient, emotional. Correct the child. Correct my story. Correct me. I stepped closer, steady, unshaking. "You are never touching my daughter again," I said, looking her dead in the eye. "Never again." Regina's eyes widened as if I'd violated some sacred hierarchy. "Clara, you're completely unbalanced. This is what I've always said. You can't control your emotions." "No," I replied, calm, cold, clear. "I just took too long to see who you really are." She opened her mouth to retaliate, but I raised a hand. "Get out of my house." Regina inhaled sharply, as if trying to gather whatever power she had left. She grabbed her purse with a sharp motion. "You'll regret this," she said, turning away. And then something happened that changed everything. As she walked through the living room, Anna opened her eyes, drowsy, confused. And when she saw Regina, her little body recoiled. Not in physical fear, in emotional fear, learned fear. Regina saw it and ignored it. And in that moment, something solidified inside me like stone. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't misjudgment. This was a pattern, and my daughter needed to be rescued from it. When the door shut behind my sister, I felt the first breath of air that actually belonged to me. But I still didn't know the worst was coming, or that to save Anna, I would have to confront more than my sister. I would have to confront my entire family's history. After Regina slammed the door, the house fell so quiet it felt like it could hear my heartbeat. Not a normal quiet, the kind of silence that tells you something inside you has shattered and is rebuilding itself into a different shape at the same time. Anna was still asleep on the couch, her body heavy, surrendered to a sleep that didn't belong to her. I stood there for a few seconds, watching her slow breaths, her small frame, the afternoon light falling across her face without waking anything inside her. And right then, looking at my daughter dimmed like that, I finally understood a truth that destroyed me and rebuilt me in the same moment. This didn't start now. This didn't start with Anna. It started with me. I sat on the floor beside the couch and let my hand rest on her little foot. It was warm, but she didn't react. My little girl always pulled away because she was ticklish. This time, nothing. My heart cracked. I stood up slowly, grabbed my bag, and went to the table. Took out the bottle, the note, and whatever courage I had left, courage I didn't even realize I possessed. And suddenly, a memory burst open, one I hadn't touched in years. I was 10. I cried too much, had too many nightmares, felt everything too intensely. And Regina, at 15, would say, "Stop the drama, Clara. You just make life hard for everyone." My mother would say Regina had the right temperament, and I had the wrong emotions. And there, right there, the truth hit me loud and sharp. Regina didn't drug my daughter because Anna needed it. She drugged my daughter because I needed to be quieted, emotionally, throughout my entire childhood. Anna was a reflection of me, and Regina tried to silence her the same way she tried to silence me. The pattern finally came into focus. I shook from head to toe. That's when I walked to my neighbor Monica's house. I needed another voice, another woman, someone who wasn't tied to my bloodline's emotional script. I knocked once before she opened. She looked at me and didn't ask anything, just pulled me inside and shut the door. "What happened, Clara?" she asked, genuinely concerned, a tone I hadn't heard in my own family in years. I placed the bottle on her table. She looked at it, and her face hardened. This is serious," she said quietly. I nodded. The doctor confirmed everything. Adult sedative. None of this should ever have touched my child. She sat slowly, as if needing the chair for support. "Clara, can I tell you something I never had the courage to say?" "Go ahead." Monica took a deep breath and held my hands. I always noticed that Regina wanted Anna to be quieter. She always said you were too emotional, and that Anna would turn out the same. I thought it was odd. Now I see it was more than odd. It was dangerous. A chill crawled down my spine. "Have you seen this before?" I asked. She nodded, her face heavy. "With your nephew? The one Regina always said was misbehaved. He'd come back from her house just like Anna, dazed, sleepy. I remember mentioning it to Harold once, but he brushed it off. Thought it was just childhood stuff. Today," she sighed, "today I know it wasn't." My throat tightened. So Anna wasn't the first child. My daughter wasn't an accident. This was a pattern no one had ever dared name. On my way home, something pulled me toward the garage. I opened my father's old toolbox, the one Regina always rummaged through when she visited, to fix things. Inside, behind the screwdrivers, I found a yellowed envelope. My heart jumped. It was my mother's handwriting. Old letters, all addressed to me, all never delivered. In one of them, a sentence that knocked the air from my chest. Regina says you've been too restless, that you need limits, that she helps you stay calm. I nearly dropped the paper. Regina had tried to mold me long before she tried to mold my daughter. Regina had always had this invisible mission to prune the emotions of anyone who dared to feel too much. I sank to the floor of the garage, among boxes, dust, and memories I never wanted, and cried for everything I hadn't seen. For every night Anna came home off, for every time I blamed it on tiredness, for every sentence of Regina's I swallowed as truth, for every time I left my child alone with her, believing I was receiving help, for the girl I had been, pushed beneath my own skin. When I finally caught my breath, I said out loud, firmly, "This ends here." Not with yelling, not with fighting, but with awareness. Regina wasn't just a difficult sister. She was a woman who believed she had the right to edit emotions, mine, my daughter's, any child in reach. And for the first time in decades, something inside me shifted. An ancient strength, long asleep, started beating again. I was awake, fully awake. And a mother who wakes up is a wall no one crosses. I stood up, wiped my face, and went back inside. Anna was still asleep, but her breathing was less heavy now. I brushed her hair, and I felt it, faint but there, life pulsing again. And that's when I understood. I wasn't just saving my daughter. I was saving myself from a pattern that had chased me for decades. And for the first time, I had the courage to break the cycle. But I still didn't know that the next step would be the most brutal of all. Watching my own family choose sides, and almost all of them choosing the wrong one. I thought I was ready. I thought that after finding the bottle, confronting Regina, and hearing Monica's confirmation, nothing else could shock me. But I was wrong. Because some truths don't come through the eyes. They go straight to the stomach, the chest, the part of the soul where we keep everything that should never have happened. And this truth came printed on a white sheet inside a pale blue folder that looked far too innocent for the weight it carried. When Dr. Everett called me back to his office, my palms immediately began to sweat. Anna was with Monica, laughing softly, playing, smiling for the first time in days. I wanted to protect that smile. I wanted to protect her. And I wanted to protect the part of myself that still believed this might all be an overreaction. But when the doctor opened the folder, the illusion shattered. He placed the report in front of me, said nothing at first, no explanation, no softening, just a silence so sharp it felt physical. I read the first line, and my breath cracked. Adult class sedative substances detected. Controlled medication. Strictly contraindicated for minors. High risk of affecting memory, language, and emotional development. I read it again, and again, until the letters blurred. Doctor, my voice barely existed. Was all of this inside my daughter? He nodded, with a kind of pain in his eyes I'll never forget. The pain of a professional who knows the truth will wound deeply, but knows hiding it would wound worse. Clara, he said gently, Anna was exposed repeatedly. This wasn't accidental. This wasn't a one-time dose. This was a pattern. Pattern. That word pierced me like a blade. The room tilted, not violently, but just enough to tell me I wasn't standing in the same world anymore. He continued, she may have difficulty concentrating for a few days. She may have memory gaps, mood shifts, excessive sleepiness. But, a slow breath, there is still time. Children's brains recover. But it's absolutely crucial that she has no further contact with the person who administered this. I swallowed hard. And she's going to be okay? He placed his hands together on the desk, not touching mine, but steadying me all the same. She will, but you need to protect her, and you need to understand why this happened so it never happens again. I closed my eyes. Because I did know, and admitting it was the worst part. When I got home, I sat on the couch holding the report like it was radioactive. Monica arrived with Anna in her arms, my daughter sleepy but smiling. A small smile, but real. I almost collapsed to the floor at the sight of it. How did it go? Monica asked softly. I handed her the report. Her face fell as she read, the shock hitting her like a punch. Oh God, Clara. I didn't answer. I couldn't. Anna reached for me. I hugged her with an intensity that bordered on desperation. And silently, inside my chest, I made a vow. Never again. That night, I called the family together. I knew it would be ugly. I knew Regina had already planted her version. I knew I'd be painted again as dramatic, emotional, unstable. But this time, I had armor. I had the report. And truth does not ask permission. My mother arrived first. Concern on her face, but not for me, for Regina. Always for Regina. Clara, your sister called me. She said you're starting trouble again. I placed the report on the table and slid it toward her. Read. Harold came in next. He looked at me, at my mother, at the folder, and I saw something in his face I had never seen. Fear. Old fear. Recognizable fear. My mother opened the report. With each line she read, her face crumbled. This can't be true. Regina would never. Harold let out a bitter laugh, one made of pain, not humor. She would, he said quietly. She has. For years. You just never wanted to see. My mother stared at him in disbelief. You're telling me your sister drugged your child? Clara, that's an extremely serious accusation. I inhaled deeply. For the first time, I didn't let guilt bend my spine. It's not an accusation, Mom. It's medical evidence. If you can't believe me, believe science." She began to cry. But not for me, not for Anna, for the collapsing pedestal she had built for Regina my entire life. And then Harold finally said the words he had carried for decades. She did this before, to our nephew, to other kids she thought were too much. You all know it. You just refuse to face it. My mother covered her mouth. Oh my God. But I felt no pity, no relief. I felt release. For the first time in my entire life, I wasn't the dramatic one. I wasn't the problem. I wasn't the overly emotional sister. I was the mother who saved her child, and the woman who finally woke up. I looked at them both and said, with a calm that came from the center of my soul, "I'm not protecting Regina's image. I'm protecting my daughter." The silence that followed wasn't shock. It was truth settling in the room like a stone. And from that moment on, nothing was ever the same, because I had confronted the oldest lie of my life, and I won. When the dust from the family explosion finally began to settle, I thought the worst was behind me. But the worst isn't when the truth appears. The worst is when it stays, breathing in the corner of every room, waiting to be faced again and again. In the days that followed the confrontation, the house felt bigger. Or maybe it was me, finally filling the space instead of shrinking inside it. Freedom is strange at first. It feels like guilt. It feels like fear. It feels like standing barefoot on a brand new floor, unsure if it will hold. Regina disappeared. No calls, no messages, no attempts at pretending innocence. But her silence wasn't remorse. It was strategy. She knew I wasn't backing down this time. The first person to knock on my door was Harold. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in one night, carrying decades of secrets on his shoulders. He walked in without small talk and sat on the couch as if he'd reached the end of a long escape. "Clara," he began, elbows resting on his knees, "I need to tell you what I know." My chest tightened. The truth he was about to reveal didn't feel light. It felt generational. He rubbed his face with both hands, let out a long breath, and said, "What Regina did to Anna, she's been doing versions of it since she was a teenager. Not with pills, not that I ever saw, but with behavior, with control, with emotional manipulation. She's always believed emotional kids are defective, that children who feel too much need to be corrected." Those words slid into me with a familiarity so old, they barely hurt. They were the soundtrack of my childhood. "She did it to me, Harold," I whispered, "for years." He nodded. "I know, I saw. But," his voice broke, "I never had the courage to step in. Everyone in this family is afraid of her, believes her. Regina's always known how to sound like the only adult in the room." Yes, I knew that well. I'd lived that. But Harold wasn't done. He hadn't come just to confess cowardice. He had come to drop the final piece of the puzzle. What she did to Anna, he looked straight into my eyes, wasn't just because she thinks kids should be controlled. I waited. It was because, he swallowed hard, Anna reminds her too much of you. When you were little, you were emotional, alive, intense. And Regina hated that. She said you were too much, that you made life difficult, that no one could handle you. She made it her mission to make sure it didn't happen again. The room tilted. My hands went cold. The ground under me shifted in a slow, cruel way. "And she said that out loud?" My voice was almost gone. Harold lowered his gaze. "Many times. Anna is just like you. And Regina said she wasn't going to raise another Clara. She said it like it was a curse she had to break." My breath disappeared. So that was it. This wasn't about Anna. It had never been about Anna. It was about me. My daughter had become a target not because of who she was, but because of who I used to be. Anna was punished for resembling the version of me Regina spent her life trying to erase. It was resentment passed down, packaged as concern. It was emotional history disguised as responsibility. It was cruelty disguised as correction. My daughter wasn't the problem. She was the mirror. A mirror Regina couldn't stand to look at. "Clara," Harold said softly, "you need to understand, none of this is your fault. None of it. You were the first victim. Anna would have been the second if you hadn't waken up in time." Waken up. The phrase struck something deep inside me, because it was true. I had been sedated in a different way, by trust, by habit, by family dynamics old enough to feel like nature. And now, I was finally conscious. The following days, I started putting life back together piece by piece, not fueled by rage anymore, but by clarity. 1. I cut Regina out of every access point to Anna, blocked her number, notified the school, alerted doctors, created a radius of safety around my child. 2. I made copies of the medical report, stored them in separate folders, dated, labeled, protected. 3. I confronted my mother. She cried, denied, tried to defend Regina. But this time, I didn't fold. I said the sentence that finally separated our histories. "You can choose whichever daughter you want, but I'm choosing mine." 4. And then I talked to Anna. Gently, simply, with love. She listened, leaning her head against my shoulder. When I finished, she whispered, "I like it better when I feel awake, Mommy." That sentence, that tiny, innocent truth, opened something inside me that had been locked for years. Awake. That's what Regina had tried to extinguish, and that's exactly what I was protecting now, with everything in me. Days later, Regina finally sent a message. A single line. Cold. Predictable. "You destroyed our family." I breathed in, breathed out, and replied, "I saved my daughter." Then blocked her, without shaking, without guilt, without hesitation. That night, I sat on the floor of Anna's room while she drew a picture using 3 crayons at once. Bright colors everywhere, wild strokes filling the page. She was vibrant again, unfiltered, untamed, alive. And in that moment, I realized I hadn't just almost lost my daughter. I had almost lost myself. I had almost let my family's narrative continue through another generation. I had almost let my light dim so hers could be manageable, but not anymore. The emotional girl Regina tried to silence, the intense, too much version of me, was the exact mother who saved Anna. And for the first time in my entire life, I felt proud of who I was. I always thought the greatest loss of my life would be losing my daughter. And for a few terrifying days, when she moved slowly, spoke softly, and slept like someone who'd been pulled underwater, I believed I was losing her, little by little. But in the end, she wasn't the one I nearly lost. I was. I was the mother who once believed she had to be small to be lovable. I was the girl taught to lower her volume, to avoid being too emotional, to shrink herself so others didn't feel uncomfortable. I was the woman who mistook silence for peace and obedience for affection. And while I was busy protecting Anna, I realized I was finally protecting myself too. The morning everything settled, the morning after the truth had detonated, rearranged my life, and left only what mattered standing, I woke up to a silence I didn't recognize. Not the tense, suffocating silence that once whispered, "Careful what you ask." No, it was a new silence, clean, breathable, a silence made of oxygen instead of fear. I lay there, eyes half open, listening to the quiet, and for the first time in a long time, it didn't scare me. It felt like something inside the house, maybe even inside me, had exhaled at last. Then I heard a soft humming. I sat up, turned my head, and saw her, Anna, sitting on the floor of my bedroom, brushing her doll's hair while humming a tune that changed every 5 seconds. That beautifully chaotic melody that had always been hers. And when she saw me awake, she smiled. A full, messy, radiant smile. I sat up slowly because something in my chest cracked open and healed all at once. "Good morning, Nami," she said. It wasn't just a greeting. It was a homecoming. "Good morning, sweetheart," I whispered back, my throat tight. She climbed onto the bed, curled into my lap, and sighed. A soft, natural sigh that belonged only to children who feel safe. That was the moment I felt my daughter whole again. Not dimmed, not muted, not slowed down by anyone else's idea of good behavior. Whole. Later, while we made breakfast together, she tapped the spoons on the counter, creating her own music. A week before, I would have called it noisy, chaotic, exhausting. But now, I saw it for what it truly was. Life. Her rhythm, her brightness returning. She wrapped her arms around my legs suddenly and said, "Mommy, I'm happy." I inhaled, sharp, emotional, grateful, as if the words had reached a place in me that had been dark for years. "I'm happy too, sweetheart, so much." And then came the sentence that closed the entire story inside of me, the one that sealed her healing and mine. "I like it when I feel bright, awake, unfiltered, just like me." My heart shattered and rebuilt in the exact same moment because I finally understood what Regina had been trying to erase. Not just Anna's spark, but mine. The same light I'd been told my whole life was too much. The same intensity Regina couldn't handle. The same emotional truth she tried to quiet in both of us. The same light that nearly disappeared in a 7-year-old girl. But now, no one gets to dim that again. That night, as I tucked Anna into bed, I leaned my forehead against hers and whispered, "You will never be made smaller for anyone. Neither will I." She fell asleep with a soft smile, her breathing steady, the kind of sleep only protected children have. I closed her door gently and stood in the hallway, letting the quiet fill me. And in that moment, I felt the greatest revelation of all. I didn't lose my daughter. I didn't even almost lose her. I almost lost the version of me who believed intensity was a flaw. But now, I know the truth. Intensity saves. It awakens. It protects. It was my intensity, the part Regina tried to cut out of me, that saved us both. And as I turned off the lights in the house, I realized we were beginning a new life. A life whole, honest, fully awake. Because in the end, it's simple. When I watched my daughter brighten again, I realized I had been the one sedated. By loyalty, by guilt, by inherited silence. Now we are both awake, both bright, and no one will ever touch that light again. That night, as I tucked Anna into bed, I leaned my forehead against hers and whispered, "You will never be made smaller for anyone. Neither will I." She fell asleep with a soft smile, her breathing steady, the kind of sleep only protected children have. I closed her door gently and stood in the hallway, letting the quiet fill me. And in that moment, I felt the greatest revelation of all. I didn't lose my daughter. I didn't even almost lose her. I almost lost the version of me who believed intensity was a flaw. But now, I know the truth. Intensity saves. It awakens. It protects. It was my intensity, the part Regina tried to cut out of me, that saved us both. And as I turned off the lights in the house, I realized we were beginning a new life. A life whole, honest, fully awake. Because in the end, it's simple. When I watched my daughter brighten again, I realized I had been the one sedated by loyalty, by guilt, by inherited silence. Now we are both awake, both bright, and no one will ever touch that light again.